In this lesson, we're going to learn about simplifying absolute value expressions. So let's go back and review absolute value and its meaning. Remember that the absolute value means the distance a number is away from 0 on this number line. So this first example right here, we have the absolute value of -3. That's equal to 3 because notice it is 3 steps or 3 units away from 0 on the number line. And then when we go and look at the absolute value of 4, that is also a positive because it is 4 units away from 0 on the number line. And the thing that we've learned is that absolute value is always going to result in a positive answer. So the absolute value of a negative number is positive, and the absolute value of a positive number is also positive because we're talking about that distance away from 0. All right, example 1, simplify the absolute value expressions. So take a look at number 1 and number 2. When we have a parentheses, that is not the same thing as the absolute value. When we have parentheses here, as we do in number 1, those parentheses are simply just taking the place, making sure that these two negatives don't run together. So in this case, we can take a look and we have two negatives with that parentheses that is going to make a positive. So the -4, or the opposite of -4 is +4. For question number 2, again, we just have the parentheses and we have 3 sets. Remember, 2 of the negatives are going to make a positive, and then a positive and a negative. So the opposite of a positive is going to be a negative, so this one's going to result in a -6. So now let's take a look at number 3, where we've got the absolute value of -4. So we're looking at for how many units or how many steps is -4 from 0 on the number line, and it is going to be 4. And again, absolute value is always going to be positive. So now if we have the absolute value of 4, it is also 4 steps away or 4 units away from 0 on the number line. That is also going to be +4. All right, question number 5, we have the negative absolute value of 8. So we need to pay attention to the order of operations here. And the order of operations would say that we need to take the absolute value of 8 first, and then before we do any adding and subtracting. So I'm going to take the absolute value of 8, which is 8, and then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to put that minus or the negative sign in front of it. And so the negative absolute value, or the opposite of the absolute value of 8, is -8. Now for question number 6, we need to be careful not to confuse one like this with this. In this case, remember that the parentheses have no mathematical value, and so it's just simply keeping those two negatives away apart from each other. So what I have here then is I have 2 negatives, and we know that that would make a positive, so this would be +5. And for number 6, what I have is I've got the negative absolute value of -5, which means the opposite of the absolute value of -5. And again, just like in question number 5, I have to then evaluate the absolute value of -5 because those absolute value symbols have a mathematical value. So the absolute value of -5 is 5, and then I'll come back and I will just place my negative sign on the outside of that. Now for question number 7, what we have here is we have to do any simplifying inside of the absolute value symbols first before we can take the absolute value of it. So I need to simplify inside of here first. It's almost like there's parentheses going on inside of this absolute value symbol, and we need to start there. So I'm going to take the -5, so 2 negatives, remember, that makes a positive. So what I'm evaluating then is the absolute value of 5, and we know that the absolute value of 5 is +5. So for question number 8, again, we have to simplify inside of our absolute value symbol. We need to take -5 minus 4 first, and -5 minus 4 is equal to -9. So now I need to evaluate the absolute value of negative 9, and that's going to give me positive 9. All right, for question number 9, we have the absolute value of 6 minus the absolute value of negative 4 minus 5. So the first thing that we would want to do in evaluating this expression is I need to simplify inside of my absolute value symbol. So I'm just going to come and I'm going to rewrite my absolute value of 6 minus, and then we know that negative 4 minus 5 is equal to then negative 9. All right, now before we can do anything else, we have to then evaluate the absolute value of 6, and we have to evaluate the absolute value of negative 9. We know that the absolute value of 6 is 6, and we know that the absolute value of negative 9 is equal to positive 9. And then we have 6 minus 9, and that's going to be equal to negative 3. The one thing that you're going to want to make sure that you're not doing is that you can't come here and put those together as a positive. And the reason for that is that you've got those absolute value symbols right here, and they have meaning. They have a mathematical meaning, so you can't go and, like you can parentheses, and put them together and make a positive. All right, so for question number 10, we have negative 2 times the absolute value of 4 times negative 3 plus 5. So remember, we also learned earlier in the year that whenever you have a number right next to the absolute value symbol, it means to multiply. Well, let's go ahead then, and we have to simplify everything inside of this expression here first. And so we have 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. And negative 12 plus 5 is equal to negative 7. So now what we need to do is we need to come and we need to then take negative 2, and now let's evaluate the absolute value of negative 7. The absolute value of negative 7, is positive 7. And so our answer is going to be negative 14. All right, it says evaluate the expression when x is equal to 1 and y is equal to negative 5. So we have 3, and we're going to plug in 1. And then we have minus 5, and you could either do this or this. It doesn't matter which one. All right, so we need to start in the in here, in the absolute values. So we have to simplify in there. 1 plus negative 5 is negative 4, absolute value, and then we're going to take 3. And then we have 3 times the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. And so now we're done. We just have to take 3 times 4, which is going to give us 12. All right, again, for number 2, we're going to plug in the 1 and the negative 5. So I have the absolute value of 1 minus. Now be careful here. We're bringing in that negative 5 here. And we had that, the minus already there. So when we simplify this, again, inside of here, these two negatives are going to make the positive, and I'll have the absolute value of 1 plus 5, which is the absolute value of then 6, and the absolute value of 6 we know is 6. All right, question number 3. Let's go ahead and we're going to plug in our negative 5 where we see the y. So I have negative absolute value of negative 5. Again, we need to evaluate what's going on inside the absolute value symbol first. So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5, and then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to put my negative back on. For question number 4, we have the absolute value of x, so absolute value of 1, minus the absolute value of negative 5. Again, we need to evaluate these first. 1, I'm going to have minus, and then the absolute value of negative 5 is 5, and 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Question number 5, we have 3 times the absolute value of y plus 3, and then plus 5. So I want to take 3 times my y is negative 5 plus 3, and then I have now this plus 5 at the end. Again, we have to evaluate what's going on in the absolute value symbol, so I've got -5 plus 3 is -2, and then I have 3 plus 5. All right, so absolute value of -2 is 2. So what we have here is we have 3 times 2 plus 5, and 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 5 is going to give us 11. All right, our last example here, we have -4 times x, which is 1, minus 5, and then plus 2. And again, we're following the order of operations, starting with simplifying inside of our absolute value symbol. -4, and so times -4, because 1 minus 5 is -4, plus 2. We have 4, and now we have to take the absolute value of -4, which is +4, plus 2, and 4 times 4 is equal to 16, and then 16 plus 2 is going to give us 18. In this lesson, we took a look at how to simplify algebraic expressions.